All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to What's on Your Radar, the Simply Cyber Live show that brings senior practitioners to come talk about what is on their radar this week. Things that popped up that caused them to want to do a little bit deeper inspection. We're going to explain why. We'll have an open dialogue and hopefully deliver some value to the community. So I guess just to kind of jump right in, Don, if you want to go first, what's on your radar?
Hi, everybody. I'm Don Weber with Cutaway Security, and my background is in industrial control systems. Well, my background is in a lot of different things, from the information security assessments to penetration testing, both in the corporate environment, but right now I focus on control environments. So what I've been focusing on, I just got back from doing a security assessment, and fortunately this was in a test environment, we were gathering information, and it started reminding me of some of the conversations I had with some of the thought leaders and some of the people that I listened to around the NERC space. So NERC is the organization. One of the things that they put out are regulations for critical infrastructure, specifically for our utilities, and they have requirements for gathering information from a system and creating baseline for that system. It's a very important as kind of an initial audit, gathering the data about what's installed, software that's installed in the system, current patch levels, and so forth. All of the things that you would consider important to under creating a baseline. And but there's been some modifications around Windows. Now with the updated Server 2022. Windows 11, they're taking away that WMI interaction for querying data from the system. So I wanted to update some PowerShell scripts for that so that organizations that didn't have this background for automating data collection had something to work on. So I came up with, I call it the NERC SIP assessment scripts, and they're just two different PowerShell scripts to gather the information that's required. Let me see, I got to pull this up for NERC SIP 010-3.R. And there's some specific guidelines around gathering information from operating systems. But then, of course, while I was doing that, I always go above and beyond for some reason, take on more than I can chew. And so I was like, hey, you know what? We can also gather the volatile information from the system. We can gather the data for current listening ports. We can see what USBs have been connected to the system. And so I created a collector script, and I also created a digital forensic script to gather all of that volatile information. And I placed it out on the Cutaway Security GitHub. So that's what I've been working on today, this week.
I love it. So, Don, really useful tool there. A couple questions that come to mind right away. So, you said it's on the Cutaway Security website. So, is that a kind of like a repo that you maintain on your site?
Well, no, it's on GitHub. So I'll put.
Yeah, drop it in chat.
Yeah, so I'll drop it in chat in just a second. But I'm constantly trying to think of things that are useful. I have to automate some of my actions. So. And if you're not familiar with writing, Python scripts, Bash scripts, PowerShell scripts, you should be automating some of your tasks around these things. If you find yourself doing things over and over, you want to do it consistently on other systems, not just on the one system that you're at, you should automate it. And it's an important part of the process. You get consistent results with that. So I have a bunch of different scripts up there. I actually have some tools that interact with different industrial control protocols as well to gather information to help understand implementation. So you can find that on out on our GitHub.
Well, one question before I let John jump in. Are these scripts, so are they just querying and pulling data, or are they modifying as well?
Well, I have tools that do modifications, and you got to be really careful with that. For this, and especially in these environments, Typically, I don't do any modification. I'm a pen tester. I'm not an administrator, but I can provide tools that automate some of those processes. These are specifically just for baselining. This is just gathering the data about the system so that they can, tell when there's changes that are that have been made, whether intentional or unintentional. They've got responsibility for configuration management, as we would hope for. That's one of the requirements. So we put those out.
John, any thoughts around the scripts?
A little bit. The question that comes to mind with you talking about you had mentioned using them in like a test environment, right? And correct me if I'm wrong, but you said test environment, right? I think that was the word that I heard.
Well, that's what I was doing last week. Was actually
that's what you're
in a test environment so that they are getting ready for the deployment.
Gotcha. So, has the folks at the round table here, experience. We know that you get different experiences and different effects using your tools in different types of environments. Rather, it's in a test environment or like an R&D environment, prod, non-prod, and things like that. So, with these scripts that you're running within a test environment. How do you, and this is more of too for anybody listening, is how do you anticipate adjustments that for the results that you're going to get for those scripts in a test environment versus something like a production environment?
Well, I mean, that's so most of the time, I don't know anybody using these scripts, beyond me. I mean, I'm constantly looking for input. I do get periodic input from people to update it, to make it more useful for them. So I'm constantly monitoring issues and pull requests on the GitHub. So I use this both in the test environment and into the production environment. But if people are going to be using this for implementation, which is what I think your question is more designed for, getting that you have to tweak things to make it useful for whatever your reporting tool is. Basically, if you are just outputting things and storing those into a directory so that you can reference them later, then that's one thing. If you're pulling them into a spreadsheet, for a list of software and so forth, that might be another. So this is just a starting point for this kind of project, and I'm looking for input on what would be useful with organizations. Should I, right now it's just text output, or should I make it so that it's commas separated values as CSV file? What is useful and implementable by people? I can't predict that. Actually, I mean, I can, but it would take so much of my time to do that. I don't want to waste my time. So this is just really something to help people get started if they need that start. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just as I was mentioning, GitHub is a great place to do, for open source projects and for community feedback. So for any of you other PowerShell gurus out there, feel free to go and look at the tool because and give comments on it, because that's what makes those types of tools better for everyone. So yeah, no, that answered my question.
And I dropped a link to Don's repo in chat, and I want to say thank you. I think it's Adam or Auden, who also copied it on LinkedIn. I don't think chat goes to LinkedIn, so Auden, thanks for echoing that onto the LinkedIn. Final question, Don. So I know you're an industrial control system specialist, and you had mentioned that these scripts are really good for NERC, which I think is kind of a standard around nuclear energy, perhaps. Do you know, are the checks, maybe I'm wrong, the smile on your face makes me think I just overshot that, but are these checks viable for people who are working in more traditional IT corporate environments, or is this really more specialized for what you're looking for in those energy environments?
So it's multifaceted, right? It's our corporate environments are usually more mature, associated with the tools that they've implemented to gather some of this information. I mean, if somebody's using they changed the name, Microsoft Endpoint Management System. It used to be SCCM, but now it's like WMECM or something like that.
Yeah.
If they're using that within their corporate environment, it collects a lot of this information. It gets the list of all the software. It gets a list of all the services that are running, and so you can use that. But a lot of organizations that are within our critical infrastructure, they don't have that MECM, that SCCM deployed within their environment. So they have to actually, in a lot of cases, they have to resort to manual a gathering of this data. And so that's kind of why, first of all, that's why the NERC requirement is there, because they've fallen behind and they didn't do that before. And it's pushing them towards doing that asset management, both device and software. So I always say these are just, the stuff that I put out there are just to fill the gaps for the people that don't do it. But if you're not doing that in your corporate environment, first of all, you should be. It's a good guide. Understanding what you have deployed out there is extremely valuable. If you're not measuring, then you can't make improvements. And so people can use this if they don't have those tools. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it totally does. So it sounds like, if you're out there, check out Don's repo. But if you're responsible for, configuration management, baseline management, vulnerability management, and you're working in environments where you can't just point a single endpoint and scan everything, this could be a useful utility. So Don, definitely thanks for that. And Don, before we jump on to John's radar, real quick, Don, you run a weekly live stream for Cutaway Security, don't you?
So first of all, you should hear me better now because it wasn't going through my regular mic. Apparently,
where's this guy been?
Oh my gosh! I apologize about the audio. I mean, and the first time we did this, we had audio problems. We actually had video problems. I apologize to everybody. That was probably horrible. Yeah. So, and actually, I started. You were saying I have a weekly Friday stream. I try to do it at about lunchtime Eastern time every Friday around industrial control systems. God, I apologize about that. And now I'm embarrassed.
No problem. Hey, if you got a link or anything, drop it in the private chat and I'll drop it in chat so people can get on the Discord and see your live streams.
Oh, okay. Excellent.
Yeah. So while we're doing that, Dr. Helmus. Oh my God. I almost made that mistake. Dr. Helmus, why don't you tell me what is on your radar, sir?
Oh man, all the things. So right now, something that's been on my radar, that's probably been on my radar for way too long, and has become a bit of more of an obsession than anything, is just cloud security, and more directly with understanding how like culture within organizations are working with cloud security. So rather you're a project manager, or if you're a pen tester, or someone working with endpoint detection solutions, it doesn't matter. Like, how are we moving into the cloud? So this is something that has really encompassed my life, as I mentioned, and what I've really been interested in understanding and looking at, and a lot of my own research, including some of my academic research, has done a deep dive into understanding the phenomenon and why folks are, why we're essentially acquiring secure cloud services. So if you go and you sign an SLA with AWS, you're agreeing to use their services, and they're selling you a secured service. And then if you think about it in an enterprise environment, we'll stick to enterprise environments, we're seeing these secured services acquired, and then they're being configured, and then they're being deployed insecurely. So I'm really looking at the very obvious middleman there of secured services acquired, and then it's deployed, and it's not. So what's the issue there? Okay. And so, like, what is there to explore there? And I think the obvious issue is to look at the folks that are handling that, right? So kind of almost look at like the chain of custody, but with the cloud. So that's been something that I've been really looking at. Recently I defended my dissertation, which actually focused a lot on that. And so what I did was interview a lot of practitioners that work with cloud, or their direct job is to secure the cloud. And from that, a lot of good things were produced, but also some negative things were discovered and observed. And from that, I discovered that one of the big issues, and I think we're all we all have to sit back and eat a piece of humble pie is that a lot of folks are working with the cloud based on best knowledge rather than best practices. And those are two totally different things. Sorry, can't talk today. Two totally different lines of thought where you work with, you work with a baseline that's right in front of you versus, well, I'm going to do this because this is how it's worked in the past. And with that being said, the issue there is that it's no lie that the cloud is continuously evolving, right? And it's allowing us to do things at a better level, and potentially a more secure level and faster. But the issue is that the infrastructure is completely different. It's completely different than on-prem type of assets or technology. And so with that, there's a lot more complexity to it that we have to understand of how we're configuring it, how we're securing it, and how we're monitoring it. And, I mean, there's other things too to take into account, but just even with those few things, if you misconfigure or overshoot one of those things, it can completely crumble your cloud infrastructure. And on top of that, we're seeing companies go more and more into the cloud. A good case in point is Capital One. Capital One about 4 years ago was, or three or 4 years ago, was the victim of a cloud breach that has been mentioned in numerous use cases. And now they are I think they're the first financial company to go fully into the cloud. Now they have pushed everything into the cloud. So that's going to be something interesting to look at to see how they're going to take their mistakes and actually push that forward into, essentially learning what they did wrong and making all of that their infrastructure. So I guess I realize I went on a long tangent here just now.
It's all right. It's your radar.
But the big thing here that I'm really looking at is how do we ensure that these issues that we see with cloud infrastructure, these leaks, kind of diminish in impact, because they're always going to happen, right? But how do we diminish it in impact, and how do we diminish the likelihood of it happening? And there's a lot of ideas out there going around. There's a lot of research, and I'm hoping that a lot of the research that I just got finished producing is going to lead into more research where folks are going to look at new ways of how we train folks, rather that's required by the actual cloud provider. So say you sign up for AWS, cool. You have to take regular scheduled training and be accredited by AWS to use their services. Or if it's, something that's required by a third party, right? Like if you think about it, like we have like PCI and HIPAA and things like that. Maybe now we have to have a cloud amendment to it as well, which is going to require a new revamp in training and a new revamp in frameworks. But if we look at the way how the cloud is scaling upwards and the way of how our methods and tactics of securing and monitoring the cloud are not going at the same scale, then we're just going to see these issues continue to I guess tumble is the best way to put it.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's interesting. And real quick, as a programming note, I saw people, Brian, asking for us to have our name tags up. Like I'm frantically Googling on the side, like how to make it. There's no slider, there's no toggle. I don't know how to make it show up. I'm reluctant to have chat go away because I like having chat there. So we'll get to the bottom of that. But red shirt over here is Don Weber from Cutaway Security. Up here is John Helmus from a million different places. And down here is Jerry with Simply Cyber. So apologies on that. John, back to your cloud thing. You said Capital One moved everything up to the cloud. I mean, I don't know what level of detail you understand, but did they move like their SecOps capability? Like is all their SIM and all their telemetry going from cloud to cloud and there's nothing on-prem?
Yeah. So if you look, there's a couple articles out there. If you read up about it, they have put out to the world that they have moved all technology into the cloud, that they're 100% cloud. So hybrid cloud, but cloud. Or I'm sorry, not hybrid. Sorry, not hybrid, multi-cloud. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that's kind of conflicting. Yeah, I mean, I'll just give my hot take on this, and then Don, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So here's my thing. like Amazon, the whole deal with cloud is that they are doing everything kind of from depending on what you build up in there. A lot of like AWS stuff is platform as a service. So like it's really, they handle from the OS down. If you're just lifting and shifting your data center, that's not really cloud. That's just a different data center. So if you're doing platform as a service, then it's everything from the OS down. My argument is that it's either incumbent upon the cloud provider to secure those things, or incumbent upon the cloud provider to produce security solutions that can be used by practitioners in order to assess the security of those things. Like, and I know you can only lead a horse to water because we see these S3 bucket leaks all over the place, and it's easy enough to scan, as well as John, to scan and find these leaky buckets. But I feel like there should be like a blinking red light. Like, are you fully sure that you want an open S3 public bucket? Like, I don't know. You can't rely exclusively on engineers to be able to do it. You have to enable them and almost protect themselves from themselves in some of these cases, in these cloud infrastructures. That's my take on that.
Yeah, no, it's and I mean some of the new security solutions and security controls put in place for those, they have those blinking red lights, like S3 buckets. Now they have to where they're not public by default, and then they also even have, like, if you try to make it public, it gives you a warning banner saying, hey, this is going to be open to the internet. And even if you click yes, then it's like it gives you another banner. It's like, are you sure? And then you still click yes. And so like that in and of itself is also a use case of saying, if people do certain things like that with even not fully understanding it, that right there is an indicator that folks are still going to go off of best knowledge or what they think is right based on their cyber ethics, rather than best practices, which again, I feel should be probably enforced by the cloud provider.
Yeah, they must have got my letter. I rant about this on Simply Cyber all the time. Don, lots on the radar here.
Oh my gosh, it's there's so much to think about. My previous experience from the corporate environment, I did watch some of our infrastructure being moved from our physical infrastructure, taking down the data centers and offloading everything into the cloud. I was looking at it from a SOC perspective, and we had some alerts that were displayed up on the wall, and we could see the mod security alerts, for everything that we were getting from all of our web servers that were in our data center. And you could slowly watch them start going down. And, and eventually I walked in one day and it was at 0, our mod security alerts. And I looked at the team, I was like, why are we at 0 there? And they're like, well, I guess we're not getting alerts. I was like, so you're telling me nobody's attacking us from the internet anymore? And I was like, and I tried to get them to go down that path. Okay, why do you think that is? And so after about 5 minutes, if they couldn't figure it out, I was like, because we moved everything to the cloud and we're not getting any alerts anymore because we haven't figured out how to ingest our logs and monitor our logs there. And that is, you're talking about, people planning and moving it over. It's something they don't expect to lose some of that vision when they're moving things over. So that's my first thought on it. Yeah, I'll pause there to see if there's any input.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, John, like, are we heading to hell in a handbasket? Like, you've done a lot of research on cloud. I mean, are we moving in the right direction, or are we just blissfully running off the cliff like a lemming?
You don't have a choice.
I was about to say, I think we're kind of, we're all, momentum is a hell of a thing, right? So we're all kind of like being pushed into that way. It looks like somebody even mentioned a good comment that kind of sparks an idea of it. They said, what happens when everyone moves into the cloud and prices become become unaffordable, right? And I think that's like the point of a lot of sales schemes, or just any kind of product that you put to market, right? If you can saturate and take the entire market and monopolize it, kind of like with what Microsoft did back in the 90s, then you have control of it. And so with that, if that's the way how this goes, then it's going to be, I mean, it's kind of like a Robin Hood, which sounds really lame saying, but it's going to take just folks essentially kind of, not instead of raising their hand, just speaking up and pushing forward to do the right thing and teach people how to do the right thing, so that, you know, the folks trying to, you know, take their products to market and using the cloud understand the infrastructure that they're working with, rather than just looking at it as a viable solution to scale quickly or produce something on a low friendly budget.
Right. Yeah. And for me, you know, this really goes to being a mature adult administrator or leverager of technologies. We have to be asking the questions that you're just talking about. We have to be prepared for new technologies to break our normal paradigms and move out of it. The industrial control arena. So they've actually added cloud. They just did an update to the international standards that help govern the deployment and like how to configure the deployments and how to secure it. And they've updated that for cloud at every level, because we're seeing vendors and integrators products that require that cloud integration. And if you want to do things cheaper, if you want to save money in certain areas, then you will allow that connectivity from the cloud into your control environment. But you have to do it. You have to be prepared for it. Ask the proper questions. And those proper questions are what people don't understand. So you need to have educated team members that understand the cloud to create those policies, standards, and procedures around correct implementation.
So for anybody listening in, if you're looking for a way how to go to market and make a solution or a platform, there you go. Just make general cloud security training platforms.
Yes. But vendor lock-in is a real thing. Vendor lock-in is very easy to get integrated with a vendor. It's very difficult to transition. So it's almost a monopoly if we're being very honest with ourselves. Like, you get up into Office 365 and then the price gets way jacked up. It's almost cost prohibitive to migrate off. So you're stuck between two really bad options. And you're just financially hamstrung, you know? I mean, you're already renting. You're not buying a home. You're renting a home for your systems and your data. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, which, you know, OpEx versus CapEx, the CFOs love it, but yeah, it's dangerous if you don't do it well. So
yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I think it's also going to be an interesting push in technology culture in general too, because what doesn't start an argument better than, you know, a clash of like ethics and knowledge and everything, and people thinking like, well, this is what I know better, and this is what I know better. So I think it's gonna create a lot of friction that might make things potentially worse before they get better.
Yeah. So Jerry, what's on your radar? Oh, thanks.
Oh, you want me to ask that? I could ask that.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So what's on my radar? So guys, I wanted to bring up something that came to my vision just recently: data brokers. So some of you may have seen this John Oliver video that came out last week tonight on April 11th. So just a few days ago, and he goes into deep detail of data brokers. Now, this is quasi information security related, but it popped up on my radar because we, as stewards of information security systems and allowing interoperability of systems, right? Like hooking systems together, putting our data in other systems, data sharing agreements, all these things. We are asked as professionals, is this okay? And I feel like a lot of times it's asked, is the transmission secure? Is it encrypted in transit? And people aren't asking, is this ethically okay? Is this morally okay? Do we want to put our data here? Because surprise, like once the data is there, it's there, right? Data is very easy to duplicate. This data brokers episode gets into, you know, we talk about this all the time in social media and all these things. When the product is free, it means you are the product, right? So these pieces of telemetry, when you log into Facebook, how long you spend on there, what ads you click on, how long you look at an ad, what your network says, how you respond to certain keywords, what you search for on Google, all of this telemetry, although it seems minuscule and insignificant at its single data point level, when you aggregate it at mass, it becomes very, very interesting on general population attitude and the ability to manipulate for worse or for good, right? And that's what this data broker thing is. So really quick, there are businesses, much like this one right here called Epsilon, that they engage with businesses like Facebook and Google and whoever, right? Anyone that collects data on anyone, and they purchase it, and then they enrich it with all the data they buy from everywhere else. And they don't say it's Don Weber's profile. They say it's it's identity 1, 2, 3, 4, but they say, oh, he's into energy. He was in the Marine Corps. He likes the color blue. Like, he wears glasses. You know what I mean? Like it's very detailed, right? Here's his family. Here's his income. Here's the type of things he's into, whether private or not private. And then they use it to basically, the argument is that they are making better, helping you make better choices and getting directed, targeted advertising, which is fine, right? I'll be the first person to say it, and I've said it in the past. Hey, you know what? If I'm going to get an ad for something in my stream, I'd rather it be for something like video game, craft beer, cybersecurity, Boston sports. Like make it relevant to me. I'd rather see that than an ad for something I don't care about. And that is the utopian way of using this. The problem is when you use that data, and I Google something like, I don't know, something polarizing, right? Or like, let's put it this way. I Google ICS security consultants, right? Maybe Don Weber's Cutaway security comes up to the front because it's a spot on match for my Google query, right? Well, let's say that Google doesn't like Don's politics, right? So Google can push Don's things all the way to the bottom, and Don will never see the light of day. And there's nothing illegal about that. And maybe they show Don's stuff to other people, but because of the profile that has been made on me and the likelihood that me and Don are going to collude on something big, it gets suppressed. Right now, I'm merging a bunch of things right here because I only have a few minutes for this radar. But my point is, I found it enlightening and eye-opening that this kind of collection of data and surveillance issue is a thing. And I just want to point out that this isn't like some conspiracy theory thing. Like we just saw recently, this is March 2nd of 2022, executive guidance around surveillance tracking of apps and data being captured in apps. Now, one thing to point out is this is more specific around targeting children and advertising for children and all the things wrong with children. But guys, spoiler alert, like kids and adults, they're just users, right? We're classifying them as users we don't want to target, but that just means that we're not applying any of this regulation to adults, right? So it's a little scary. I'm not saying I'm not like blowing a whistle or anything. I just found it very interesting, and I dug into it a little bit more. And just to share one other thing, when you think of how could this be weaponized in a way that makes you want to puke, this is from 2019, because I remember covering this. Let's say that the telemetry informs us that John Helmus has a gambling problem. Sorry, John. Now, John has been working hard to get over that gambling problem, and he has. So now he's a recovering gambling addict, and he's doing well. Well, if he's Googling, where's the nearest Google Anonymous he's Googling the nearest Gambler Anonymous meeting. These individuals were targeting slot machine advertisements directly at John. And that's sinister because they know he's more compelled and probably weak-willed to want to dive in and get back into gambling. So it can be weaponized in a way that is just unfortunate and inappropriate for a society that I'd like to see moving towards healthier and more, helpful structure than, capitalism at all costs. Any thoughts on my radar, John?
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. No. So what is, every company, in my opinion, not every company, but the majority of them, you're talking about data brokers. I feel like most companies, if not the majority of them, are all some type of data broker. This deception is at the door where they are a data broker, but they are selling you or having you sign up for a product, right? So Facebook is a data company, but their product is their social media service, right? So they lure you in by saying, like, it allows you to connect with your friends and stuff. So then they bring you in and then you're like, well, I want to use the application. So you sign the service agreement and you're like, yeah, what? I don't care what you do with my data, right? So click. Exactly. And so so many other companies have done that. And then, and now they have, and what a lot of us, we don't realize because we're all guilty of doing it, where we just click, is, those companies will have information sharing agreements with each other to where they can share that data with you, right? And because it's kind of like what you talked about, they can, if you have a gambling habit, or if you have something, a vice that you're trying to get rid of, and you're obviously looking for it on the internet, on those platforms, they're going to track it and then sell it to other people that they have those information sharing agreements with. And it's in the retrospect of everybody making money, right? And it's all about making the dollar symbol get bigger. But it's not illegal, right? It's unethical, and that's where these type of these type of conversations that you're talking about, these are like those ethical conversations to go against those unethical practices, to finally be like, look, like, we got all these, like, using the gambling issue, like, we have all these people that were off of gambling, they were able to financially become stable again, and then because they were looking these things up on Google, or while they were like authenticated to Facebook and it tracked what they were looking at, they're able to get targeted now to, get back into gambling, and that's ruined their lives again. And obviously that has a ripple effect of who else it affects. So I think it's kind of back to what I feel like I might be echoing myself again, but it's going to get worse before it gets better, because it's going to have to take enough people to be like, we need to fix this. This isn't just unethical. This should be legal.
This is wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I think about this, and I've always said that, it's unfortunate that the database was created and how it is impacting my children and my sons. I grew up in an age where we could make mistakes and it didn't track us for the rest of our lives. But now my sons are growing up in a society where everything they do is tracked. It's in a database somewhere. If they make a mistake, somebody's going to be able to find out about it. And when it comes back around to what you're talking about tracking everything, what you need to watch is, have you seen Don't Look Up yet?
I have not, but I know it's on
so,
Netflix, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So they actually take the data brokering to the extreme, where they're taking all of this information and they're doing predictions on your behavior of what you will and won't accomplish. And then they're taking that and deciding where you can work, or whether or not they want to interact with you at all. So when you're talking about suppressing businesses or suppressing political views, suppressing your progress forward on that was the kind of one of the premises from the Don't Look Up, and I think it's I fear that is something that people will attempt to do. I do feel it's wrong. People change all the time, but we can't. Yeah, so it's we can't stop that behavior, but we can try to build a better society around that. And really, we have the purchasing power. So when we realize that people are doing that, we should be freaking, hitting their pocketbooks where we can. Regulation does some of that, but just putting this stuff down does the other part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's too bad though, because our society is like so technology and internet dependent right now that to not have it is you're disconnected. You're not part of it.
I can't get away from it. And I do it and I put into it, and so forth. So I don't know the solution, but I don't think it's all bad, but I do think that we're progressing in some dangerous directions as well.
Yeah, I think it's eventually going to have to become where secured solutions to the more lucrative and attractive counterparts, like if you take like Facebook, for instance, there's going to have to become more secure and usable solutions that the general population can use, and that's attractive to them, right? If you think about secured applications like Signal, right? Signal is a good application to use, but not a lot of folks use it. In fact, more folks probably use WhatsApp, which is insecure, than Signal, because that's just and again, that's a Facebook product. But I think that's another thing that's going to happen is people are going to have to be finally be tired of it. And it's that pivotal shift in culture, which we all know is difficult to influence. And a lot of times it takes that group think or mob mentality to shift it. And that'll be the time where like the secured solution providers, where it's gonna be like, yeah, we're like Facebook, but you know, we don't sell your data everywhere. We're just here so that you can talk to everybody. And people be like, oh, this is cool. Awesome. I'm not getting ads for shoes that I thought about like 2 weeks ago.
But how do they pay for that infrastructure? You would have to pay for the service.
Yes, absolutely. And but that's the thing is, I think, you know, there's things that we pay for now that, you know, you wouldn't think of paying for however long ago. So I think it would become to that point where you would use the social media or the social network as a service, and you'd pay like your $5 premium or something and enough subs. You know, in the business model, they'd say, okay, if we have this many subs, we can support this type of infrastructure.
Yeah, and Bob mentions like how it's the Minority Report. I was just going to say, like, we're already seeing kind of an extreme, I don't want to call it weaponization of this, but an extreme federal level implementation of this in other countries, where they're essentially establishing a social credit score on whether or not you're allowed to get move into this city or hold this type of job or get a loan, which we see with credit reporting now. But like literally they're defining like, well, based on all of your behaviors that you've done to this point, we have a high confidence level that this is the person you're going to be. So we're not going to allow you to pursue dreams because you're a lost cause. And it's like, what the hell? Like, give me a shot. You know what I mean? So I find that to be a little unsettling, to kind of have a predisposition beyond, you know, based on who you were. And people, like you said, Don, people change all the time. I mean, your kid, like who you were as a kid, who I was in college, definitely different people.
Oh yeah, me 100% if you knew my background. But you have to watch Don't Look Up now. You have to watch Don't Look Up.
I'll check it out. Yeah, and also since we're sharing recommendations, gosh, it's on Netflix. It's about the Cambridge Analytica. It's not Social Dilemma, although that's a good one. It's called damn it, I know what
you're talking about.
Yeah, there's one about Cambridge Analytica and how they used data to kind of manipulate essentially elections across the world, starting in Trinidad, Tobago, then Brexit, then the 2016 United States election, and how they were involved in helping sway or incentivize. Yes, thank you. The great hack, Brian. They're not trying to change people's opinion. They're trying to find people who are undecided and push them in a certain direction. Very fascinating documentary, maybe sensationalized a little bit, but based on true facts. So, all right. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? This has been a really good radar. Don?
I mean, it's, technology can be doom and gloom. I mean, when we look at it from a security perspective, but, I do feel that it has enriched our lives, but we have to do it smartly, whether we're doing it personally, like we just ended on, or earlier, like we were all talking about, implementing it, as a part of our careers, whether we're the technology person or the managers. We have to know this stuff a little bit better. We have to understand it. And that's just doing personal education, research, attending some classes that are paid for. And, it is useful. And, so don't get caught up in the doom and gloom that we can in the security profession.
Yeah. John, any final thoughts before we send pushback from the table?
Yeah. Just to kind of like echo off of that is, yeah, it's, just to, technology is definitely something that we can use to better our lives, but it's a tool nonetheless. So if you don't know what you're doing with it, you can potentially misuse it, or it can and directly misuse you. So make sure that you know what you're doing with it. It's not like a car where you can just jump in. It's this big mechanical machine that you can just jump into and drive it from point A to point B. It does a lot more than that. It can, in the sense of like tracking what you're doing. So make sure that, when you're out there doing stuff and you see all the blinky lights that are attracting you to them, make sure that you know what's controlling those blinky lights and how they're luring you in. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Absolutely. All right, Don Weber at the top right, John Helmus at the bottom. I'm Jerry Auger. This has been Simply Cyber's What's on Your Radar. Thank you all for being here with us on this Friday at 4 o'clock. We'll be doing it every Friday at 4 o'clock with rotating guests. So if you're interested, come on back, join the community, and we'll share ideas and have a good time. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks for putting this on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.